Tonight, bandits still on the prowl in the northwest attacked Dansadal community in Zamfara state, killing 3 people as 48 others are reported killed in Zango Kataf in Kaduna state this week. 12 years after Boko Haram insurgency reared its head in Nigeria, we revisit the fallout of the terrorist campaign and the fight against it. All set for the conduct of the local government elections in Lagos and Ogun. Police in both states warn against misconduct as civil society organizations decry lack of voter awareness. And European Medicines Agency approves use of Moderna's COVID vaccine for children aged between 12 and 17 years. Plus business, sports, news from Abuja, and later international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's forex reserves record its highest weekly growth in 25 weeks, raking in $53.48 million.
On sports news tonight, Japan's Emperor Naruhito declares the Tokyo Olympic Games officially open.
And from Abuja, Federal High Court in Abuja orders the Department of State Service to produce 12 aides of Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho, in court on July the 29th.
Parts of the country, especially the northwest, are still under siege by bandits and kidnappers, with the latest attack on Dansadal community in Zamfara state, where 3 persons were killed and 7 others abducted. Meanwhile, in Zango Kataf local government area in Kaduna state, it's been a bloody week, with at least 48 people reported killed and over 300 houses razed by gunmen. And it's 12 years since Boko Haram insurgency broke out in the country. We go down memory lane and trace efforts at containing the terrorists, as well as the cost of the horrific campaign. We begin from Zamfara state, where bandits have attacked Dansadal community in Maru local government area of the state, killing 3 persons and abducting 7 others. Residents in the community told Channels Television that the armed bandits attacked around 2:30 a.m. in a raid that lasted for about 4 hours. This attack comes barely a few days after 100 kidnapped victims from Manawa village on the Dansadal district were released by the armed bandits, and barely a week after a military Alpha jet was shot down by the so-called bandits in the state. The State Police Command is yet to officially comment on the attack. Dansadal community, which is about 99 kilometers from Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, is one of the hottest spots in terms of banditry, kidnappings, and other related crimes in the state. Kaduna State has also been a hotspot of attacks by bandits. No fewer than 48 people have been killed and over 300 houses burnt down by gunmen suspected to be herdsmen in different attacks on Atiap Chiefdom in Zango Kataf local government area of Kaduna State. The Atiap Development Association says the coordinated attacks, which lasted for some days in about 12 villages under the chiefdom, left no fewer than 1,000 people displaced, with several others injured. The people are appealing to both the government and security agencies to come to their aid and stop the carnage. We'll bring you more on that in the course of a bulletin. Meanwhile, when the Boko Haram insurgency started in 2009, many Nigerians, including the government, did not foresee the possibility of the carnage, terror, and anguish lingering for so long. Now it's been 12 years since the nation has been battling to win the war, but the impact of the conflict is still hitting hard on the affected population in Borno State. The group has also been involved in kidnapping, with the abduction of the Chibok girls an ugly reminder. This next report attempts to chronicle the activities of the terrorist group in the last 10 years.
From its mention and whispers in the streets of Maiduguri 12 years ago to its emergence as the #1 terrorist organization in Nigeria, Boko Haram has come a long way since this man, Mohammed Adamu, the leader of the sect, was allegedly killed by police officers while in custody. His death propelled the group into not only seeking to avenge his loss, but also imprint their ideology on the society community by community. A new leader emerged in Abubakar Shekau, who led vicious attacks that rendered hundreds of thousands homeless, leaving thousands dead, and the government with a monumental humanitarian crisis. The group has also challenged the federal government by launching attacks on state establishments, particularly security operatives. It received international attention when it hit out at the United Nations building in Abuja, raising questions about the capacity of the terror group. Another incident that cannot be forgotten is the kidnap of the Chibok girls in 2014 in Borno State, and later in 2018, another set of schoolgirls were also abducted, this time in Yobe State. However, the insurgents, who had before now controlled swathes of territory in the northeast, have been pushed to the fringes of the Lake Chad area and Sambisa forest following consistent bombardment by the Nigerian armed forces.
We are going to reinforce and reinvigorate the fight not only against the elements of Boko Haram, which are attempting a new series of attacks on soft targets, kidnappings, farmers versus herdsmen clashes, in addition to ethnic violence fueled by political mischief makers. We shall tackle them all.
But the war has come at a huge cost, not only in terms of lives lost, but also finance. Could the events of the past 12 years, which saw the rise of Boko Haram, have been avoided? Perhaps that question may not be as important as what should be done now to put an end to the dangerous phenomenon and avoid a recurrence.
And 12 years after the first series of attacks by Boko Haram on several police stations across northern Nigeria, policymakers in Africa and the rest of the world have been told that they must learn lessons from the rise of the violent extremist group if they are to counter similar groups. In a new report from the Tony Blair Institute titled "Violent Extremism in Sub-Saharan Africa: Lessons from the Rise of Boko Haram," the former British Prime Minister said, "To reach the right solutions and a proportional response requires us to trace the roots of the movement and understand the common ways in which Islam's beliefs in all local contexts are exploited and politicized. Boko Haram today threatens not only Nigeria's future, but also that of wider sub-Saharan Africa. A commitment to confront extremism on the continent together will be a first critical step to realizing this region's full potential." The report recommends that all governments directly affected by Boko Haram activities, including those in Nigeria, Niger, Chad and Cameroon, must do more to synchronize their military, de-radicalization and prevention programs. Well, to get more insight into this fight against terrorism that has lasted for at least 12 years, we're being joined on the news at 10 by Mr. Kabiru Adamu. He is a security and risk intelligence analyst. He's also the managing director, Beacon Consulting. Good to have you on the news at 10, Mr. Adamu. Well, what began as a local group of radicals over 12 years ago is now responsible for the deaths of nearly 350,000 people, more than 90% of whom are children, according to a UN report. So, if you can, help us understand why it has been very difficult to put a stamp of finality on this war.
Thank you and good evening. Now, the war is not a conventional warfare. It's a war that has been described by different people in different terms. One of the most commonly acceptable definitions is that it's an asymmetric warfare, where the fighters are enmeshed together with the population. And so the Nigerian military has found itself fighting a battle that it's not exactly used to. Now, what the government did when it realized this is to introduce the National Counterterrorism Strategy, which was meant to have at least 3 different components: the military component, then what is called the countering violent extremism. Now, the idea of countering violent extremism is to address the root causes of terrorism, and this would include illiteracy, poverty, some of the socio-economic grievances that are driving terrorism. And this was captured almost aptly by the Tony Blair report. Unfortunately, what we've seen in implementation is that there has been very little implementation of the CVE component of that counter-terrorism strategy. What rather has received more attention has been the military approach. So the effect is that the terrorists, unfortunately, continue to exercise influence. They are still able to recruit. They are still able to bring in their weapons. And to an extent, they still have considerable local support. And so with that scenario, that environment, unfortunately, they continue to thrive.
You know, I think that's a very important area that should be focused on, as you referenced. But looking at the cost that we've put into this in terms of personnel, equipment, and funds in these 12 years, would you say that we've been able to justify that amount of resources that we have put into this war?
Unfortunately, no. There is a school of thought, a perspective that is even discussing what is called the political economy of the funding of terrorism. And it's just a very big way of saying there is corruption involved in that political economy. And unfortunately, the angle that, for me as a researcher, I look at is the absence of a very clear and structured monitoring and evaluation mechanism within the counter-terrorism strategy that would allow me as a researcher, or you as a journalist, for instance, to look at that funding and say, okay, this is what was used with X amount of money. In other words, an auditable system that would allow anyone who, for instance, has the authority to look into that funding and say, yes, those monies were used for the purposes for which they were voted in. And so there is that perspective that also believes, because of this political economy of the funding of the counterinsurgency, some persons within the military hierarchy are interested for this terrorism to continue beyond the years that it would have lasted, as it were, we're almost 12 years into it and it's still continuing.
Right. So, on a final note, do you see any other Boko Haram in the making? I mean, we're battling so-called bandits, killer herdsmen, what some other people call unknown gunmen, and the rest. How do we prevent another Boko Haram from happening?
The tool is with us, actually. I mentioned the counter-terrorism strategy. And the mistake, I would say, by both the previous government and the current government has been the focus on the military strategy and not necessarily giving either similar attention or perhaps even more attention to the CVE approach. Now, as long as you have socioeconomic grievance, as long as you have illiteracy and poverty to the levels that we have in Nigeria, then unfortunately there will be groups that will capitalize on that to perpetrate themselves and continue these types of terrorism. So even if there is another Boko Haram in the making, the possibility of other groups sort of evolving into terrorist groups is very high once those conditions remain. So the key is to address those root causes, reduce the poverty, address illiteracy, address those socioeconomic grievances, and then strengthen communal cohesion. Once you do that, then you reduce the possibility of these groups from growing and expanding. And CVE is the most advanced mechanism that the world has put forward for doing this.
Well, Mr. Kabiru Adamu, Security and Risk Intelligence Analyst, as well as the Managing Director, Beacon Consulting. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in part 2, after the break, we'll bring you more on the series of attacks on Zango Kataf in Kaduna State, plus all set for the conduct of local government elections in Lagos and Ogun tomorrow. Electoral umpires, police and civil society groups speak on preparations for the exercise. Stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Bandits still on the prowl in the northwest attacked Dansadal community in Zamfara State, killing 3 people, as 48 others are reported killed in Zango Kataf in Kaduna State this week. 12 years after Boko Haram insurgency reared its head in Nigeria, we revisit the fallout of the terrorist campaign and the fight against it. All is set for the conduct of the local government elections in Lagos and Ogun. Police in both states warn against misconduct as civil society organizations decry lack of voter awareness. And European Medicines Agency approves use of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccines for children aged between 12 and 17 years. Let's now bring you more on the series of attacks on Zango Kataf in Kaduna State, where no fewer than 48 people have been killed and over 300 houses burnt down by gunmen suspected to be herdsmen in different attacks on Atiap Chiefdom. All the people are appealing to both government and security agencies to come to their aid and stop the carnage.
Zango Kataf is again in crisis, and these images of burnt houses, vehicles, motorbikes and other household items paint a gory picture of what is perhaps one of the deadliest attacks on 12 villages in the chiefdom by persons suspected to be armed herdsmen in the past few days, a development that left about 48 persons dead. Some residents of the area described the assailants as militiamen who continue to terrorize them by carrying out their well-orchestrated acts of killing, maiming and destruction of people's sources of livelihood. With about 300 houses razed by the bandits and farms, which are the people's main source of income, gone, it appears that a humanitarian crisis is looming in the community as those displaced are now taking refuge. While the victims count their losses, a peace-building meeting between all the concerned parties was held at the Kaduna State Government House to find solution to the age-long crisis. But beyond the gathering, the question of what those responsible for protecting the people are doing comes up.
The governor felt it necessary to also call the stakeholders to come for another round of meeting so that better decisions that will sustain the peace can be taken.
My advice to all of us is that we should continue to see ourselves as brothers. A Fulani man is a brother to a Tiab man is a brother to a Fulani man, a Hausa man is a brother to a Tiab man. By the time we begin to see ourselves like that and begin to operate as brothers and sisters, I think no brother will want to take arms against his own brother.
The Hausas and the Fulanis are all there. They have sent representatives. We have had, the governor has had us, and the government have taken measures, and some of the measures which the government have taken has been said to us, and we are very happy, and we are sure that the fundamental issues has not been addressed, and we want to believe that peace will be restored in our place very, very soon.
Over the years, Zango Kataf local government area of Kaduna State has been in the news due to the lingering crisis that had led to loss of lives and property worth millions of naira. And as the people continue to try to pick up the pieces of what is left of their lives, their main concern is for government to fish out those responsible for the crisis and bring them to book.
Also, election matters. Going by what the electoral umpire said today, Lagos residents should be treated to a well-organized and hitch-free exercise. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., the polls will open across the 20 local government areas and 37 local development areas of Lagos, and voters will elect local government chairmen and councillors. Our political correspondent, Seun Okibaloye, brings us up to speed on the preparations ahead of tomorrow.
The Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission LASIEC office in Yaba area of Lagos is seeing an unusual traffic, and it's few hours before Saturday's local council polls. Last-minute preparations. Some of the last set of materials stacked, ready for deployment. After so much controversies over the last few weeks, the names of the candidates are finally here. The chairperson of the electoral body seems to be confident about the exercise and its team's preparations.
Election will be conducted with the use of smart card readers, and voters should present themselves at their polling units with their PVC, their permanent voters card, or their TVC, temporary voters card, if they don't have a PVC.
except some areas which will now need urgent attention because it is about transmission of results.
As to uploading of results, we're going to upload into a cloud, as same thing as INEC does. Our website should really reflect the results. We're having a bit of a problem now with uploading, but they're still battling with it. And hopefully the results will be reflected on our website. Hopefully, but we're still working on that.
However, some civil society organizations and election observers are not happy with the preparations leading up to the Saturday's exercise and have their fears.
There are concerns that elections in some LGAs could be marred by violence, especially resulting from unresolved intra-party and inter-party conflicts from the primaries and in the pre-election phase.
Voter education campaigns by the election stakeholders, especially political parties and LESIEC, have been poor. Engagement with citizens revealed that another reason for possible low voter turnout is the growing discontent amongst the system with local governance.
I cannot recall anything that shows that there's much preparation in Lagos with respect to campaign.
And so, we got to town to find out from Lagos residents.
Don't even know whether election or no election day or not.
You know, I have not seen that jingle or things that are reminding people that something like this is going to happen.
Even though I'm aware now, I don't think I'll vote. To be sincere, I'm not sure I'm going to vote.
Sure, I'll vote. It's necessary we cast our vote.
Lagos State, with over 6.5 million voters across the 13,323 polling units of the 57 LGAs and LCDAs, is expected to be busy electing its local government administrators, a critical layer in the governance of the nation's commercial capital. Shinwa Kimbaloye reporting for Channels Television News.
And as Lagos residents warm up for tomorrow's election, the Lagos State Police Command says there shall be no movement between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. in all the areas where the elections are taking place. The restriction comes as the police say they have deployed men to provide adequate security before, during and after the elections to ensure free, fair and credible elections. The Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odumosu, however, warns political parties and their supporters that the police will not condone any act of thuggery, hooliganism, electoral malpractice or other criminality.
We have been to a series of meetings now, that is stakeholders meeting. So with the state INEC, so in respect of that, we only have where we meet all the security agencies now. So under the chairmanship of the President Electoral Officer and co-chaired by Commissioner of Police, we've been having all this meeting, series of meeting. All the agencies now involved in security, and equally now, so the political party gladiators, all political parties will have this, so that they will go a step further in voters' education, and the need for them now to conduct, so to ask their followership now to conduct their activities within the base of the law. And since they start flag up their campaign now, there has not been any issue. That shows that we are prepared and we're in synergy with everybody. So we should get ready for July 24. So prayerfully and as usual now, the election will come and go smoothly without any issue. Security-wise, we are ready.
And from Lagos to Ogun State, where all seems ready for the local government elections scheduled for the 236 wards of the 20 local government areas of the state tomorrow. The state government has also ordered restriction of movement during the polls. A visit to the office of the State Independent Electoral Commission located at Okelewo area of Abeokuta, the state capital, revealed that sensitive and non-sensitive materials are being distributed to the 20 local government areas of the state. Police personnel and other sister security agencies were on hand to ensure safety, and the state chairman of the Ogun State Independent Electoral Commission is optimistic of a hitch-free exercise.
As we can be, we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. All the preparations have gone apace. As at today, we have all our ballot materials ready. They have been at the CBN in the last 24-48 hours. Our people have been there this morning to pick them up, and distribute them to all the various local government areas. So by tomorrow morning, I'm pretty confident that all our materials will be available at the polling booths by 8 a.m. prompt when the polls will open. So for instance, there are some areas where we all understand that they're so-called difficult terrains. So getting our items there might be a little bit delayed. That's why we've started early today. The second thing is it's usually about security. You're asking your people that, please, come tomorrow, do not give room for violence. We can disagree, but we do not have to be disagreeable. We can oppose each other, we can be opponents, but we do not have to be enemies. It is enemies that fight to themselves into the ground. Bear in mind, if you do not win this time, another chance comes in 3 months' time, in 3 years' time.
Meanwhile, the State Police Command says elaborate security arrangements have been put in place to ensure free, fair and credible election in the state. A statement by the Ogun State Command says all tactical teams have been deployed, with all area commanders and DPOs placed on alert to prevent any violent act within their areas. When the news at 10 returns, Federal High Court in Abuja orders the DSS to produce in court 12 aids of Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho, on July the 29th. Plus, Nigeria's foreign reserves record highest weekly growth in 25 weeks with over $53 million. That's on Business News. Join us again. Now to legal matters. A federal high court sitting in Lagos has sentenced 10 pirates to 12 years in prison each for hijacking a Chinese fishing vessel in May 2020. Justice Ayokunle Faji, who said their actions affect the well-being of all Nigerians, also ordered each pirate to pay a fine of 1 million naira each. Justice Faji said the federal government proved beyond reasonable doubt that the pirates hijacked the vessel belonging to Haina Fishing Company. The judge convicted each of the defendants on all 4 counts against them. The convicts, said to be resident in Nigeria, are Frank Abaka, Jude Ebera, Shino Alolo, Joshua Iwiki, David Akinshaye, Ahmed Toyin, Shobajo Said, Adekole Philip, Matthew Massey, and Bright Agbedei. They were arraigned by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation on July the 13th, 2020 on a 4-count charge bordering on hijacking of the vessel in international waters off the coast of Cote d'Ivoire. They pleaded not guilty and were remanded in the custody of the Nigerian Navy, following which trial commenced. Let's now cross over to our Abuja studio for more on the news at 10 with Linda Akibe. Good evening, Linda.
Good evening, Kayode. Justice Obiora Egwatu of the Federal High Court Abuja has ordered the Department of State Service to produce in court on Thursday, July the 29th, the 12 aides of Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho, who have been in their custody since July the 2nd. He also directed that the matter shall proceed during the annual court vacation slated to begin on July the 26th. The aides were arrested at his residence. They sued the DSS before the Federal High Court Abuja on their fundamental human rights, describing the arrest and subsequent detention as unlawful.
The applicants that were arrested by the respondent, which is the DSS, came to court through their lawyers to seek the refuge of the court. Came to court to seek the refuge of the court, the protection of the court. Our law is such that, particularly Section 32 Sub 1 and 2 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of Nigeria 2015 has clearly stated that has clothed the court with the powers and the jurisdiction to compel any security agency or any state agency that is holding anybody unlawfully to produce the person. And that is the section, that is the law that we have invoked in the court today. And in respect for this constitution, the court found merit in our application, and the court has compelled the DSS to produce the applicant to the court in the next adjourned date. This is very important because, you see, we must not encourage people who are given powers to work on behalf of the state to abuse the power. The applicants were arrested in a Gestapo manner, and they've been kept incommunicado for almost 20 days. As a matter of fact, we've written to the DSS on several occasions, we've visited their facility, but they've denied the applicants the opportunity to meet with their lawyers. They've denied the applicants the opportunity to meet with their family. But today we are glad that the court has found merit in this application. So we can only thank God and thank the court for its industry and for understanding that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man.
Meanwhile, the court in Benin Republic handling Sunday Igboho's case says the activist cannot be extradited to Nigeria for now because Nigeria and Benin Republic do not have any extradition agreement, and Nigeria has not been able to come up with charges that could lead the court to order Igboho's extradition to Nigeria. The court has therefore adjourned the case till Monday, July the 26th, to allow the Nigerian government to bring up whatever evidence they may have, while Mr. Igboho has been taken back to the police custody. And staying with legal matters, the Federal High Court sitting in Lafia has admitted the bail application of 2 Chinese nationals and 28 others facing trial for terrorism, economic sabotage and conspiracy in a suit filed by the Nigeria police. The court, however, granted them bail with conditions such as submission of title documents undertaken by a blood relation and 2 sureties, one of whom should be a civil servant of not less than grade level 17. Before the admission of the bail application, the defendants were remanded at the Lafia Custodial Center. The court has adjourned hearing to October the 19th, 2021. President Muhammadu Buhari has returned to the nation's capital, Abuja, after the Salah celebrations at his country home in Daura, Katsina State. Before he departed Katsina, the president paid a visit to the Emir of Daura, where he urged contractors and businessmen that have benefited from government contracts to take whatever appreciation they have for corporate social responsibility instead of bringing kickbacks to him or government officials. The president's comment is contained in a statement by his media aide, which reads in parts, "I don't want your check. Go and assist your communities. We don't want checks from anyone or organization as returns or influence of any kind. Let them remember their corporate social responsibilities." The president also stated that he would have liked to visit his hometown frequently, but that the cost of the movement is the impediment because it is high. ISN Products Nigeria Limited has flagged off the 2nd edition of the ISN Medical Laboratory Scientist 2021 Award. The Managing Director, ISN Products Nigeria Limited, Mr. Felix Ofungu, says the award was instituted as part of the company's contribution towards encouraging and promoting excellence among medical laboratory scientists in Nigeria. The winner of the award is expected to receive a cash prize of 1 million naira and a capacity development training to help improve their skills at the workplace.
ISN Products Nigeria Limited, the leading supplier of medical diagnostic products and services in the country, is gearing up to recognize another set of outstanding laboratory scientists. And top officials of the ISN Medical are here to flag off the 2nd edition of the 2021 Medical Laboratory Scientist Award, aimed at promoting the works of professionals in the field.
The winner gets 1 million naira cash prize, and the institution in which the winner works also gets essentially 1 million naira, but in the form of equipment, reagents, and consumables. The first runner-up gets 750,000 naira. The second runner-up gets 500,000 naira, and each of the other 7 in the top 10, and the finalists get 200,000 naira.
For laboratory scientists interested in taking part in the competition, the project consultant explains how they can join the race.
Any Medulab scientist that is interested in applying for the project can go to the website. That's www.isnmedical.com/IMLSOTY and fill the form and submit the application. So in the form we have a series of questions that they need to fill, and at the end they submit the application. So the application will be screened, and there will be there will be series of interviews.
The Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists of Nigeria seems excited about this initiative.
We are ready to be part of this 100%. At the maiden edition, we were there. The flag off, we were there. The main event, we were also, ably represented. This year has come again. We are more than ready.
According to the ISN Product Nigeria Limited, the medical laboratory scientists have been the unsung heroes of the medical profession who play a very key role in the health sector, and they have promised to continue to recognize them in their own space.
That's all from Abuja. Now to Joke for business news.
Welcome to Business News. I'm Joke Rogers. Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves has recorded its first increase in 25 weeks. According to the latest figures from the Central Bank of Nigeria, the country's external coffers rose by $53.48 million week on week to $33.17 billion as at July the 19th. This increase mirrors the rise in the price of crude oil and reduction in forex drawdown on the external reserves. Meanwhile, analysts expect improved liquidity over the medium term due to increased oil inflows and foreign currency borrowings in the second half of the year. In the meantime, oil prices were little changed on Friday, and Brent was on track to end the week higher after a strong recovery from Monday's steep slide, underpinned by expectations that supply will remain tight through the year. Brent crude advanced 0.38% to settle at $74.08 a barrel after jumping 2.2% on Thursday, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude rose 0.17% at $72.03 per barrel, having gained 2.3% on Thursday. Demand growth is expected to outpace supply after Sunday's deal between the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies to add back 400,000 barrels per day each month from August. Global credit rating agency Fitch has affirmed the African Development Bank's credit rating at AAA with a stable outlook driven by the extraordinary support of the bank's shareholders. Fitch views the bank's risk management policies as conservative and assesses them as excellent in line with AAA-rated peers. Concentration risk is low, with the bank's 5 largest exposures accounting for 32% of total banking portfolio at the end of 2020. The local stock market was bullish at the end of today's trading session as the all-share index increased by 0.21% as investors gained about 43 billion naira. The oil sector dominated the run, with Total and Oando emerging for the second time this week as the top performers. Here's the summary.
Yep, the bull is still in the market. The equities market continued its winning streak after the holidays, up 0.21%. As a result, the total value of listed equities went up, all thanks to gains from key components across 4 out of the 5 sectors of the exchange. Similarly, the overall volume of shares traded today inched up by 13.37% against the turnover recorded in the previous session. Number of deals was also in the green and value also up. QTix led the gainers counter, while UPL led the losers counter, down 9.03% at 1 naira 41 kobo. Well, it's the final trading day of the week. Let's see what next week holds. Maybe profit taking. And that's the stock market report. I'm Ladi Williams. It's back to you.
That's Business News Tonight. I'm Joke Rogers. Back to you, Kayode.
Well, thank you, Joke. Now to Edo State, where operatives of a state police command have rescued one 11-year-old boy on Ose Friday. The rescue operation took place in Akoko Edo local government area of the state on July the 19th. On receipt of the information of the boy's abduction, the Commissioner of Police Edo State immediately drafted operatives from the Anti-Kidnapping and Cybercrime Unit of the command to the area. And through high-tech tracking and intelligence-led operations, the police followed the hoodlums to their hideout, where the boy was eventually rescued unhurt. Still ahead on the news at 10, European Medicines Agency approves use of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine for children aged between 12 and 17 years. Plus other international news from our studio in London. Stay with us. The European Medicines Agency has approved the use of Moderna's COVID vaccine for children between 12 and 17 years. It will be the second COVID jab to be approved for adolescents by the EU's Medicines Authority. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The world's greatest sporting event, the Olympic Games, has officially begun in Tokyo, but the opening ceremony was this year held in a virtually empty stadium. The sky over the National Stadium lit up as fireworks marked the start of the opening ceremony. Normally a star-studded event, this year's opening had fewer than 1,000 people in attendance. More than 11,300 athletes from 207 different nations will compete over the next couple of weeks. Hundreds of protesters gathered to demonstrate against the competition, which has been hit by several scandals in recent days. More than 100 people involved with the Olympics have already tested positive for COVID-19, but organisers say they hope the Games will bring joy to people around the world. Due to the epidemic, the Tokyo Olympic Games have been changed a lot, and there are plenty of regrettable things. Sometimes we have found that there are a lot of matters beyond our capacity, but we have to accept all the things and do the best job that we can. If the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics can be successfully held without cluster infections or the coronavirus spreading to the Japanese public, and there would not be any problem of athletes when they return home, we can then experience the joy of success. Meanwhile, the First Lady of the United States of America, Jill Biden, and French President Emmanuel Macron have been among global dignitaries to meet the Japanese Emperor.
Today, it gives me great pleasure to receive all.
After Emperor Naruhito gave a speech, each foreign leader spoke with him briefly on their way out before leaving for the opening ceremony. In addition to Biden and Macron, Prince Albert II of Monaco and the Polish President Andrzej Duda were also in attendance at the Imperial Palace. Samoa's Court of Appeal has ruled that a makeshift swearing-in ceremony for the country's next government was legal, meaning the country now has its first female Prime Minister. Fiame Naomi Mata'afa took her oath at an unofficial ceremony outside Parliament House in May. Samoa had suffered months of instability since the election in April ended the last premier's term, which had lasted for more than 2 decades. Outside the courthouse, vast party members and supporters sang hymns of gratitude and a prayer expressing their delight at the outcome. President Hassan Rouhani has opened Iran's first oil terminal in the Gulf of Oman to avoid using the Strait of Hormuz, a shipping route that has been a focus for regional tension for decades.
Pipeline,
which is about 1,000 kilometers in length, will transfer oil from facilities in Gure on the southwestern shores to the Oman seaport of Jask on the southeast. Rouhani says it was a strategic move and an important step for the country. President Xi Jinping has visited the politically troubled region of Tibet, the first official visit by a Chinese leader in 30 years. In footage released by the state broadcaster, Mr. Xi was seen greeting a crowd, wearing ethnic costumes and waving the Chinese flag as he left his plane. The president was in Tibet between Wednesday and Friday, but the visit was only reported by state media now due to sensitivities surrounding the trip. China is accused of suppressing cultural and religious freedoms in the remote and mainly Buddhist region, but the government denies the accusations. Haiti has laid its late president Jovenel Moïse to rest amid protests from angry supporters of the leader in his hometown. Moïse was gunned down in his home in Port-au-Prince earlier this month, setting off a political crisis in the Caribbean country already struggling with poverty and lawlessness. Protests continued in the city for a second successive day. Demonstrations saw protesters set tyres on fire to block roads. An Australian activewear firm has been fined $5 million for claiming its clothing eliminated and stopped the spread of COVID-19. Lorna Jane had advertised that its clothing used a groundbreaking technology called LJ Shield to prevent what it called the transferal of all pathogens. However, in a ruling, a judge said the company's claim was exploitative, predatory and potentially dangerous. Lorna Jane said it accepted the court's ruling. And finally, a bar in London is serving up drinks to a new breed of customer. The bar is called After Bark, which opened in June and is the latest venture from a dog and human community centre situated in the capital's Hackney Wick. The menu of cocktails and shareable snacks is unique, offering plant-based refreshments, meaning man's best friend can also be a drinking partner. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
News. The Ugandan weightlifter Julius Sekitoleko, who went missing in Japan last week after his dreams of taking part in the Tokyo Olympics were dashed, has returned home. Ugandan officials said Sekitoleko found out he would not be able to compete at the Games because he did not meet Olympic standards in the latest international rankings. Secretary General of Nigeria Rowing, Canoeing and Sailing Federation, Bumi Uluode, is hoping that Esther Toko can improve on her time when she takes to the waters in the early hours of tomorrow morning for a place in the quarterfinals. Toko is the first Nigerian athlete to compete at the ongoing Olympic Games in the women's single sculls of the rowing event. Mauricio Pochettino has signed a one-year contract extension with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. Pochettino joined the club in January and penned a deal until June 2022. In Spanish heavyweights, Barcelona held a training session under the watchful eyes of coach Ronald Koeman ahead of their friendly match against second division Girona. Koeman is counting on some of his key players such as Antoine Griezmann and newcomer Memphis Depay, although internationals such as Lionel Messi and Sergio Aguero are yet to join their teammates. And that's sports news.
Thank you, Ayo. And the main news again. Bandits are still on the prowl in the northwestern part of the country as they have attacked Dansadol community in Zamfara State today, where they killed 3 people, while 48 others are reported killed in Zango Kataf in Kaduna State this week. And that's the news at 10. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikilu. Good night.